You know who I am. You know where to find me. Let's get into it. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be talking about Keith Lee. Keith Lee, well, let me back up. I'm going to tell you my experience with Keith Lee so that you are up to date. My daughter, my partner in crime and business partner, she found Keith Lee on TikTok. When we discovered him, he was going to restaurants that seemed to have very little clientele, and he would go in, he would go ahead and order several plates, and then he would give an honest review. Well, very quickly, he got very famous for doing this, so he started moving in a different way to still bless companies, but in a different way. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm talking about a specific situation regarding Keith Lee, but I am not talking about Keith Lee. And you'll see why in a minute. So, as it turns out, Keith Lee and his family took a trip to Atlanta, Georgia. And they visited several places. And one of the places that they visited, I am not going to name because it was a bad experience. And the bottom line is that they would not serve the family when they went to try to place an order, but as soon as they realized it was Keith Lee, all of a sudden they wanted to serve him, and he said, no, I want the same experience everybody else gets. So he was not able to review their food. Now, for those of you who are wondering, let's go back for a second about the reviews. Let's say he ordered 2 main plates and 2 side orders. He will give you a review of the 2 plates, and then he will give you a separate review of the side orders. So if he gives one dish 7 out of 10, another dish he might give 8 out of 10, the dessert might be 3 out of 10, and the other side dish might be 10 out of 10. In my opinion, he's very honest about what he does. We have to keep in mind one thing though. Much like makeup, food is very subjective. What somebody finds really good, somebody else might not find eatable. Let's be honest. So the thing about it is that if you've been here for a while, you know that I am a huge fan of the late Anthony Bourdain. I have his books. I followed all his shows. I was heartbroken when he passed away, and he's gonna come in later. But the point of his shows was always reviewing the food and letting you know about new plates and new flavors and whatnot. And for some reason, Keith Lee gives me that same vibe, only with the added aspect that he tries to bless people whenever he can. He's very religious. You all know I'm not very religious in that sense. But I have to admire somebody that actually does good with their beliefs. Because we see it all the time that people are using their beliefs to weaponize them against certain people. And this man is actually using it for some good. In fact, one of the things he asks his viewers is to never go and pile on the people that he doesn't like their service or their restaurant or their food or whatever. Because again, he knows this is subjective, and people might have a bad day or a bad week. People might not make the best dish today, but give them a couple of months and they'll perfect it. And so when he went to Atlanta, he found out from his viewers that one of the things that is happening in Atlanta, or I should say Georgia, because I'm not entirely, no, I'm going to say Atlanta, is that a group of black people has gotten to a certain economic financial status, and they have decided to open restaurants, and some of them are really great and some of them are not so great. Another thing that's happening is that they're making these rules for service, which if I find them, I'm going to put the rules of the restaurant in question here. And not only are they confusing and they contradict each other, but it shows bad service when you actually get down to it. And here's where Anthony Bourdain comes in. The first thing I ever read of Anthony Bourdain is this book right here. And as you can tell, it's not new. I read this book and I am going to read it again for something else. But one of the things that Anthony Bourdain discusses at length is the fact that, and this has nothing to do with race, that when a certain group of people get certain amounts of money, they tend to try to open a restaurant because they think it's easy money, or because they think it'll be fun, and they don't really study the market. They don't study the actual profession, and they just want to waste money, and they waste it that way. They're not necessarily prepared for the challenges of opening and successfully managing a restaurant. And because they want to be the ones with all the glory, it doesn't occur to them to hire a manager that knows what they're doing instead of trying to manage it themselves. When I heard the story about the owners in Atlanta, that the first thing that came to mind was what Anthony Bourdain said about business owners that think it's going to be easy to own a restaurant. A restaurant business is a very different animal than any other business you'll ever have. In fact, one of the things that people tell you all the time is that if you survive working in a restaurant, you can work anywhere, because your skills are transferable to any other industry. However, not every other industry skills will transfer to a restaurant ownership, management, or serving. And so Keith Lee's story had a happy ending because I think it was the last day they were there, they went to one of the parks, and when they got out of the park, they found this business that was supposed to close at 11, but not knowing who was calling, somebody called, listen, we're out of the park, we're really hungry, can you wait for us for a little bit, or can we order so that you don't have to wait so long? And they stayed open. And then when she realized who was coming and what happened, and I'm not going to tell you so that you go to the channel and find out. I am going to leave the TikTok channel below. It was worth it. I was so happy for everybody involved, it's not even funny. But anyway, why did I bring this up? Well, I brought this up because the restaurant in question, the one that they had the problem with, their response to the situation was, well, who the hell is Keith Lee? That was bad reaction number one. Bad reaction number two, I believe it was the owner that decided to leave a comment on his TikTok saying, well, what does an autistic person know? So not only were you a horrible business owner, your business team is pathetic because they thought they would be shady, and instead of being shady, they ended up looking worse. Your rules are ridiculous, but now you're also ableist. I don't expect your business to stay open for long just because your attitude sucks. But let's go back for a second, because this seems to happen. Listen, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, okay? But I am tired of watching marginalized communities get a couple of dollars under their belt and try to be just as horrible as what they've experienced from other communities. And yes, I'm talking about the Wonder Breads, okay? It never fails to... I have seen it with Puerto Ricans, Latinos. I've seen it with blacks. I've seen it with the LGBTQ community. There's always this one group of people who tend to get the most promotion because they're being so bad. Because they tend to go ahead and, well, when I used to go to these restaurants, they wouldn't let me in because I was not the right, insert the word that you want to insert here. So then now, when they have a little money, instead of showing people how it should be done, they are just as bad, if not worse. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that that group of people give the entire community a bad reputation. We've seen it before. We've seen it, for example, in the beauty industry, specifically in the YouTube beauty industry or the beauty community, where a group of people who happen to be in the LGBTQ community have had the worst behavior, and they end up giving a bad name to everybody else. It is what it is. So how can we improve this? How do we help these people see the light? I don't know that we can. Because so long as it works to get free promotion, people are willing to do every scandal for views they can do. And the problem with that is that if they already have a following, what's going to happen is that their followers are going to see no wrong, claim that we're trying to cancel these people, when in reality, bad behavior should not be tolerated. I don't care who it is, I don't care what they do, I don't care what industry they belong to. I would not give my money to somebody that behaves like this restaurant in Atlanta. I just wouldn't. I would definitely give my money to the lady on the last restaurant they visited, but not on this particular restaurant that I refuse to name. And just so you know, at the end of this video, I am going to post the information for the restaurant, the last restaurant they saw, because if any of you are in Atlanta or visit Atlanta, this is the restaurant we should all go and check out. I don't know. I don't eat that kind of food, so I don't know if I would be able to go. And you guys know about the food sensitivities I have and whatnot. But if I can find anything I can eat, the next time I'm in Atlanta, I literally just went to Atlanta. I wish that I would have seen that before I went to Atlanta, because I definitely would have gone and checked her out. But I was in Georgia a couple weeks ago, and this happened now. I want to know if you can give us some insight into what can we do, what can we share with these people so they realize that it's not all about them. And if they really want to serve their community and provide a good product or a good service, in the case of companies that are providing services, that they should learn to be humble. They should learn to, I don't know, to do things right so that this doesn't happen to more people. Now, if you give me a second, I'll come back and share with you the rules that I was talking about, just for an example. This is editing me, and as it turns out, there's ever since I recorded this, there are a couple of things that happen. Number one, more important, the screenshot that you're seeing of Keith Lee's face is actually, um, unfortunately, and we all know this happens. If you've been on social media long enough, you know that no matter how good or how bad a person is, they're gonna get hate. Unfortunately, the hate that they're getting is basically threatening himself and his family. And he basically said, if this is the way it's gonna be, we're gonna end the tour. We're not gonna do any more cities, but more importantly, I'm just gonna stop doing this. Now, one thing that I found out, and I am going to share with you on the information box the links to all the videos that I'm talking about, because I don't remember the creators. But I did find a video where it was explained that Keith Lee used to do reviews, food reviews, back home in Las Vegas. That was what he did for a living. The other thing that was mentioned on another video is the structure of the black community in Atlanta, just so that people would understand that there is such a thing as old money, because it's going to seem a little contradictory, because I have an Instagram video that's also going to be linked below, where the woman is the person that's talking is referring to the new rich. And so it might sound confusing. What you have to keep in mind is this. When I mentioned Anthony Bourdain, the reason why I brought him up is because he did not specify who the people were that got a little money, got a little fancy, and wanted to open a restaurant, not knowing what the restaurant industry was. That has nothing to do with your old money or new money. It just happens to be one of those things that happens. In the case of Atlanta specifically, it's the black community that has a lot of businesses that have open restaurants and are getting a bad reputation because of this trip. Because the restaurant that I'm talking about is not the only one that he had an issue with. There were several restaurants that had rules that were kind of incompatible with good customer service, in my opinion, obviously in Keith Lee's opinion, and in the opinions of a lot of people. That is one thing. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that, please, you have to understand that even though Keith tries to do the best for these people, there's always going to be people on the internet that are going to do the most. and do horrible things and call people and threaten people and whatnot. I don't know if this is a thing about being old and mature, but we don't do that in this channel, so I expect the best behavior for everybody involved. Give people a chance. If you live in Atlanta and you don't want to give any of these people a chance because you've given them plenty of chances, that's a different story. But for those of us who like to support marginalized communities and their businesses, just look at the ones that he had a good experience with and maybe choose those. But that doesn't mean you're going to hate on the ones that he didn't like. Like I said, everything is subjective. So, without any further ado, now really we're going to go and read the rules. Have a nice day. I'm going to have to take the glasses off so I can read these. Let's discuss the rules, okay? We guarantee great food. Everything else is left to chance. And in parentheses, it says, we try our hardest, though. We really do. Now, here's the thing. You can have the best food in the planet. If you don't have good service, it doesn't matter. If you don't have a clean establishment, it doesn't matter. If you have an attitude problem, your great food doesn't matter. I've been to places where the food is okay, is not fantastic, but people go out of their way to give you a good experience, and people keep coming back. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not bad food. It's just that like it's not above and beyond in terms of food, but it tastes good enough to eat, and people are so sweet that you go back. Now, number 2, we do not provide individual checks. However, we will allow up to 3 forms of payment. I don't know what to say about this particular one because I'm going to give them a little grace because they're a small establishment. But if you accept 3 forms of payment, what is to say that I'm not taking my card and saying, okay, charge me for my part, and then it makes no sense. Number 3, 18% gratuity added to parties of 5 or more or checks larger than $75. Now keep in mind that I said 5 parties of 5 or more. That will come in later. And by the way, 18% gratuity, no. If you don't give me good service, you don't get to tell me that I have to give you gratuity. That doesn't work that way. Number 4, no modifications to any of the menu items. Parenthesis. If you have a food allergy, please choose another item without the allergen. Close parenthesis. Now, I don't know how much you know about food sensitivities, but for example, if you have celiac or are gluten sensitive, just having the gluten in the air might affect you. So I would consider not going to this place. But more importantly, if you do no modifications to your food items, if your menu is so rigid that you cannot make any substitutions, that sounds like a you problem. It also sounds kind of ableist, don't you think? Number 5, be nice. Why do I have to be nice when you're not? Number 6, no reservations unless you're Barack Obama. Hey, there's exceptions to every rule. No reservations. Okay, I can understand that. That doesn't necessarily bother me that much. Number 7, no table hibernation. Parentheses. 90 minutes max. Others have to eat too. End of parentheses. Now keep in mind that for what I understand, this is from the minute you sit down until the minute you leave. Not from the minute you're served. So if you, for any reason, your kitchen is slow, you're overbooked, whatever, if it takes you 60 minutes to deliver my hot plate of food, I only have 30 minutes to eat it and enjoy it and hang out with my family. Am I paying for the table? Because if I'm paying for the table, you're not going to tell me how long I'm going to stay on the table. If we prepare your selected items to our menu specifications, we will not remove the item from your bill. Our entries are not samples. Thanks. If you prepare it how it's supposed to be and you gave me something that is not eatable, I am not going to pay for it. Period. No parties larger than 4 on days that end with Y. We're a small place, and then we get busy. Large groups are hard to accommodate. We do not push tables together. Oh, let's look at this. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay? Number one. Number two, didn't she say that it was 18% gratuity in parties of five or more? See where I'm going with this? Contradictions. And number 10, we have no waiting area inside. Keep in mind, if on the wait list, you can receive a text when your table is ready. Naps in your car are fine. You have no waiting area inside, which is fine at certain times of the year, but in extreme summer heat or in extreme winter weather, you better have a place for me to park my ass. Because the problem with this is that you cannot order on the phone. You have to do what's the name of it? The people that deliver, forgot the name of it all of a sudden. And if they say you're closed, which is what happened to Keith Lee, then you cannot order. So you want me to stand there and wait outside because you did not plan for a waiting area. Yeah, that's not going to happen. And then at the end, it says, remember, this is supposed to be fun. How is it fun when you're doing some rules that are, number one, nonsensical, number two, contradictory, number three, confusing? And they are all basically putting the onus on the customer and not on the good service that you're supposed to provide. Yeah, I don't know how far you're going to go, but you're not going to go very far. And with that, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. Have a wonderful day.